completed of our schools. Every 7 years, the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction comes in and does a study and survey. You pay for it, and then they give you a grant to pay for it afterwards. It's done by architects and engineers. It's not done by lay people. It's done by people who are qualified to do it. And ours was done in 2007, 4 years ago. And so now our buildings are 4 years older with no improvements. And what we found in our study and survey is they gave every building a score, and the score was from 0 to 100. A score 0 means the building isn't there. A score of 100 you will never see, because even a brand new building would have some fault. So what you want to see is you want to see a score somewhere in 85 to 90 if you've really got good new buildings. But what they basically say is that a score of 59 or below means that the school is in need of a major renovation. Now and there's several factors for that. So the issue with this is that not only are our buildings in need of major renovation, but we also spend 9% of our operating budget on maintenance. The statewide average for maintenance is 8%. Now 1% doesn't seem like a whole lot, but when you look at our budget, that's $500,000 a year that we spend keeping broken stuff operating. That's $500,000 a year that's going into buildings and not going into kids. So here's the building. Here's the building evaluation form. This should say middle schools. That was a mistake of the architect. But there are the scores, and that's how they came out 4 years ago. I'd like to point out that every building on here except Skyview Elementary and Trent are in need of a major remodel, major renovation. This was 4 years ago. So if we want to look at what happens in 4 years' time, that's a pipe in Skyview. That is in the floor underneath the slab. And if we go to the next slide, that's what it looked like for the bulk of this year. So sometimes it's what you can't see that really matters. That's in the computer lab at Skyview. So let's talk about our past experience with the bond. This district has not passed a bond since 1996, and then it was a rather small bond. The bond to improve the middle schools failed the last 3 times it was presented. So 3 times the voters were asked to improve middle schools, and 3 times the voters rejected that. And the previous 3 proposals would not have addressed any of the elementary schools. And as you'll see from some pictures here in a little bit, those of you who don't live in them and know it already, that our elementary schools are in need of some repair. This is East Valley Middle School. This is a bathroom. What doesn't come out well is this is either red rag or some type of insulation material stuffed in the window to stop the wind and water from rolling in. But the tiles are cracked from water getting under there and freezing and cracking that off. So we've talked about the district being committed to a PK8 system. We've talked about the need to do that academically. We've talked about the need to do that from a facility standpoint, and we've talked about the need to do that from a demographic standpoint. But if the district is committed, if we're moving to a PK8, why would you support a bond? Well, the very simple reason is that whether we move to a PK8 or not, the schools are failing. The schools are on the verge of failure. And the needs are only increasing. The schools are not healing themselves, and they're not getting any better. They're falling apart, and they're going to continue to deteriorate. And there are real health and safety issues with our schools. Our fire suppression systems.
When you say the schools are failing, do you mean the teaching of the kids or the school buildings?
The schools
themselves?
are physically failing. Thank you very much, Leslie. The buildings are failing. The buildings are failing. Thank you very much. The buildings are failing, and I'll fix that, because that's something. And there are real health and safety issues with our schools. Fire suppression, our communication systems, our parking, our sanitation, our basic comfort levels are all on the verge of failure. And research shows that a well-designed, comfortable learning space contributes to improved student learning. I've seen that contribute, that number as high as 11% increase in student scores when you're in a good learning environment. This is part of the heating and cooling system at Trentwood. Now, I say part of the heating and cooling because it depends on whether you're deciding to be hot or cold that day, which way the water is running. But you can see that that is very quickly going to wear out. So again, why do we need to pass a bond? The bond under this plan consolidates and reduces the square footage of the district. We have 744 fewer students in our district. We don't need to operate the same amount of space. We need to consolidate and become efficient. The bond adds more space for community events. By being smarter about the space we use, by keeping our community schools open, we're able to add places for the community to come and use our schools. And the bond maintains our schools as centers of community, so that our schools really do become, there is no center of East Valley community. And we need to have places that people can come and feel like they belong. The final point, the other reason, not the final, but another reason is that the bond extends the useful life of our buildings that are on the verge of failure, I got it right that time, for the next 30 years. So these buildings, which are falling down in many aspects, would be useful for at least 30 years. See, I don't know what that is, but I'll guarantee you we can't find parts for it. That thing is, look at the rust on those bolts and look at the condition of it. So then why this bond plan? Lots of bond plans were thought about. We looked at combining middle schools. We looked at building new middle schools. We looked at combining high schools. We looked at 4As. We looked at PK3s. We looked at all sorts of things. And what we found is that this is the most responsible bond plan that we can put forward. This bond proposal maximizes the state matching money. And more importantly, the projects under this bond plan can be completed to address health and safety issues if state match is delayed. State match has never been lost. Even in the 1980s, when Seattle was saying, the last person out, please turn off the lights, school districts were getting state match. It has been delayed, and it has been delayed up to 2 years, but we're not nearly in that dire situation as we were in that time. Right? This bond will allow money that is currently spent on physically failing facilities to be put in front of kids. Right now, we spend an awful lot of time, energy, and money keeping broken stuff running. And we need to put that money in front of children. Because stuff continues to break down. All right? It's just continuing to break down. This is an interesting picture. This is a water system. I don't know what the brown stuff is, and I don't want to know. But you can see that it's probably only a matter of time before that system gives us the same problems that we had in Skyview. This is our best looking school. This is Otis Orchards. These are the eaves under Otis Orchards. You know, every year we end up with birds getting into the dry fit there and taking the drilling holes, and the custodians get up there and they do an amazing job of keeping the school looking good. Custodian came to me this summer after doing all that repair and making the school look really beautiful again, and said, you know, we got these complaints. People think I closed birds up in there in the roof. And I said, well, that's all right. Tell them you threw a couple of kittens in there with them. But so the PK8 maximizes the amount of match compared to other plans. This plan effectively gives us a 2-for-1 bang for our local dollars. So Here's the way it works. The district will get a state match for 230,000 square feet. We have 230,000 square feet in the district that's eligible right now. Not including the high school, all schools except Trent, which was a 78 on that score, qualify for matching money. So every school in the district except Trent and the high school qualify under this plan. If we were to remodel the middle schools, if we were to go in and use that space, we would only get about 75% of the allowable state match. And that's because the state, there is so much upgraded space in those buildings. So that, I'll show you later, that cuts our state match significantly. It's also important to understand that once we upgrade, whether we build or remodel, we're not eligible for state match for 30 years. So if we were to go in and remodel our middle schools, both of which are going down in enrollment, both of which the demographics are shifting in, we would be obligated for those buildings for 30 years. And this proposal is really about the cost versus the return when we talk about the economics. We believe that it's academically sound. We know we have to do something demographically, but this is really about maximizing our return per cost. Here's this is, I believe this is Mountain View. It's hard to see this. It's hard to see, but what's happened here is the custodians have written on the stains old. And they write on the stains old because they've replaced these things so many times they're running out of them. So instead of replacing them, they write old on there, and then when they get a new leak, they can chase the leak down. So at what point does it not make sense to throw good money after bad? So under the district plan, 4 elementary schools would get a new middle school sized gym and new classrooms. All elementary schools would get extensive remodels to address building conditions and health and safety issues. So our elementaries would come back up to standard. Gyms at Mountain View and East Valley Middle School could remain in use for both student use. I didn't know this when we originally did this, but they could remain in use for student use and certainly could remain in use for community use. Those are the areas that don't qualify for state match. So they won't come off the rolls. We will create a middle-level learning center.